This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I have a return guest. I've had a number of the Friday the 13th alumni on the show, and I've had a number of them return. Well, here's a director. Actually, to me, I think, in my opinion, probably the best director of the franchise on the phone with me right now. I welcome the wonderfully talented Tom McLoughlin. How do you do, Tom?
How do I do? I'm doing fine with an introduction like that. Wow, I'm impressed.
You know what?
I don't even know me.
Yeah, well, I gotta revamp this again because, like I said, anybody who's heard our first interview, I read the handwritten letter that you sent me in 1994. It was October 1994, and I really enjoyed getting that, and I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. 94. God, that's a long time ago. It's amazing I haven't proposed to you after all these years of knowing you. Goodness.
Well, you know, you did propose something. You proposed the idea of a really great Friday the 13th outing, and I rank Jason Lives right up there high, you know. That was, of course, when he became Zombie Jason, but you did a little more than that, you know, with the Frankenstein reference, you know, with him, Bolt of Lightning, and all of the references like Karloff's General Store and whatnot, you know, but not just that, the humor, you know, like a couple of examples, like when John Paletto is, I'm probably getting his name wrong, played Horseshack and Welcome Back, Kotter, where he goes.
Ron Paletto.
Or Ron Paletto.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad there, but yeah, when he says, you know, can we just leave? My heart can't take any more of this, and of course his heart really can't take any more of this eventually. Or when
Jason takes his heart.
Or when the gravedigger goes, you know, kisses the bottle and says, "You're gonna be the death of me." Where do you come up with these ideas when you're writing that script?
You know, I guess because there's a part of me that, you know, with a painful childhood, that I'm always looking for humor. No, I mean, I guess I always try to find some humor in things because I just think, you know, the whole universe, God had a very funny sense of humor with some of the things that's gone on. And as long as you can keep kind of reminding yourself that, you know, nothing is to be taken that seriously. And I try to, you know, put that through the work that I do, no matter what it is.
Well, you mentioned God. You must have seen Dogma, where Kevin Smith puts that wording about the platypus.
Yeah.
He said proof that God has a sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, there's an awful lot of other things that go on in this world that I go, is he paying attention, or is he just waiting for us to trip and fall, and so he can laugh and say, "I told you so"?
Well, I don't know. I do not that I get religious here. I do read from my Bible every night, and you know, I say my prayers. But I gotta say, you know, with some of the things going on in the world, it is a bit chaotic. I am waiting for the return.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. Yeah, I was raised Catholic, so, you know, it's like, as the old saying goes, you know, you can take the boy out of the church, but you can't take the church out of the boy. So I still have a lot of stuff. And if you also look at my work, there's always references or something that has to do, you know, with a God consciousness. And it just, again, it's like the humor. It just sort of happens, and I don't necessarily intend it or go, "Oh, well, how can I put that in there?" And it's not so much of a message as it is just, that's part of me. And I think any artist, you know, the best thing you can give is a part of yourself, so that people feel like it's personal. With the things that you make are personal to you. And you know, it's like, how can you make a Friday the 13th personal? Well, there's so much stuff in there that I have that are references to my best friends, like Mick Garris or Sheriff Garris, and I mean, I could just go on and on. Hawes was my co-writer on One Dark Night, so that character's named Hawes, and then just a ton of other, just oddball things that I things like you've already brought up, like the Karloff's Market and Cunningham Road and Carpenter. So I try to put as many different things that are certainly influences or a part of my life.
Well, you were the first person I interviewed from Jason Lives, and here's your second time on. I've had Nancy McLoughlin on here 3 times. I've had Tom Matthews on here. I've had Carrie Noonan on here. And I've had one of your old buddies, Whitney Ryback, Mr. Paintballer himself.
Yep.
And I've had a great time talking to him. I know when talking to Nancy, she was telling me one of her favorite scenes was a little girl in the bed named Nancy, and the scene where she's saying the prayer. I got to admit, personally, I like this too. It shows the power of God, where she says a little prayer, and then Jason's gone, and that little humorous moment where she looks under the bed. I got to say, I appreciate that moment.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's again, those things, I couldn't tell you where they came from. I guess just, when you start writing a scene, it's sort of like you're just taking notes. Something's going through you and you're writing it down as you go, and then look back on it and go, well, that works, or, I think I can do that better. But there was such a short amount of time I had from the time I was told I could, make the movie to writing the treatment to then turning it into a script right away. And then we were off looking for locations and getting ready to shoot it. So I didn't have a lot of time to think about it.
Well, there was so much in this movie that really worked. It's interesting looking back. Yours is the only one that's got actual kids at the camp. That's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, certain things I have to say, when I watched all the other ones, I kind of looked for what it was that I liked and felt correct with the legend and what the series was trying to do, and then try to see if I could shift it, try to hold on to the basic structure, but try to put a little more story aspect to it so that Tommy does something, he's motivated to do something that ends up screwing up, and he spends the rest of the movie trying to fix what he screwed up, which was obviously bringing Jason back was not his intention. And Jason, in the meanwhile, is going after Tommy and, destroying anybody in his way. So, it really had to do with, 2 very, strong conflicts, happening there, and agendas. They both had an agenda that they were trying to fulfill. And, Tommy, with the help of Megan, the final girl here, was able to, put Jason at least back in his place.
Yes. I got to say, though, of course, the 5th one, A New Beginning, Tommy's at Pinehurst, and, you have a strange ending to that. How did you, when you were approached to do this, what made you decide to go, well, probably because people wanted Jason back, but to go from the ending of A New Beginning to Jason Lives, what was your thought process in how to make that happen? Like, is it very difficult? Were you considering making Tommy the killer, or were you just going to decide to just scrap that altogether?
Well, it was kind of twofold. One, the producer, basically our executive producer, Frank Mancuso Jr., his only marching orders to me creatively was bring back Jason. I don't care how you do it. We just have to let the audience know that it's not Tommy Jarvis going to be dressed up as Jason. They were upset that it wasn't Jason at the end of 5, that it was an ambulance, driver. And then, of course, the suggestion at the end of 5 is that, Tommy's going to pick up the gauntlet and do it. So that was like kind of a solid, you're going to do this, but you figure out how to bring back Jason. So basically, I still referred that Tommy's in the mental institution. It's just not, doing the Jason, switch. And, he had the mask with him, so that kind of ties in a little bit to part 5. But in general, I wanted the mythology to stay kind of the way it was at the end of part 4.
Yeah.
Jason's dead. He's been buried. Kind of, 5 was a different type of story, but we're picking up now, Tommy is grown up and he's coming back and he wants to be sure that Jason is in that coffin, and hopefully he is, and he's going to burn his body and make sure there's no chance of this guy ever, coming back. So, it wasn't so much completely avoiding 5 as much as it was just taking a couple of things from it and then, just kind of moving on from part 4.
What did you think about the whole, did this come through your mind about where the mayor in part 5 says that Jason was cremated?
No.
No?
Didn't consider that at all. I mean, it's just like, I think the way he said it, if I recall, was like kind of an excuse. Like, he's gone, he's cremated. It's like he was kind of thrown off, as rumors are. It's like when, you hear something, and I mean, I saw his body burn myself. Well, that would have been different, but he didn't say that.
Okay.
So it's hard to follow a course on these things when part 1 and then part 2, it's so different, the jump in time. And was that a dream? Was that Jason coming up out of the lake? Was that real? If it was real, are we now 20 years later, which I don't think we are, when we start, the other one, because, Adrienne King is in there, and she certainly doesn't look any different she did from the last time we saw her. So it raises a whole bunch of people trying to, a whole bunch of questions of people trying to figure out, well, what were the filmmakers trying to do? Well, the filmmakers were just trying to make Jason the star, and, they put a sack over his head like the Elephant Man, and they kind of just did what they did in hopes that there would be box office, there was no thinking about this is going to go on forever. And even when I was doing part 6, I tried to wrap it up in such a way that if they never made another one, the scary thing is Jason is out there. He's chained down under there. Maybe one day he's going to come back. We don't know. Boom. It could end right there. But, obviously part 6 gave enough fuel to the franchise again that, we're already up to, I guess there's been 12 of them. And, hopefully the one I've just written will be the 13th if everything goes as I would like to have happen. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that momentarily because I'm excited about that. But no, after the original, there was a 5-year gap between part 1 and 2. And parts 2, 3, and 4 were kind of in that same time frame, one after the other. I'm looking at Wikipedia right now under Jason Lives, and I never knew this. It says under plot, it says a year after the events at Pinehurst Halfway House. And I'm like, okay, I didn't know there was a year between 5 and 6, because that's never really been established.
No.
Yeah.
No, people, you make up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You make up stuff, and fans either accept it or question it or try to rationalize it in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's just, everybody kind of comes up, perfect case in point is, Jason's father. I had written a whole scene to have it, not end on Jason's father, but because we'd still cut to Jason underwater in the eye, but introduce his father. And, I never set up a name or anything about him. And as far as I was concerned, he was this very unusual, odd, somehow slightly supernatural in feel, the quality that he had. And there's almost something, Svengali-esque about him. And we don't really know much other than, this is a really, really scary man in and of himself, because we know what the mother looks like. And, and as far as I was concerned, his father was this father was his birth father, not necessarily, Mr. Voorhees, who she married years later. So then I guess a comic book or something came up with the whole Elias Voorhees and made him this big hulking guy that, beat up her. And that's why Jason was, the way he was. And when I did the Friday the 13th, the game, I was asked to do Pamela Voorhees tapes from the night that Jason had drowned, that day he had drowned, and that night she's in the police station. And I basically gave a whole different mythology, from what most people were thinking in terms of the Elias character, and saying that, yes, he was his, he was the one who raised him, but he was not his actual father. His father was this other particular individual who, part of the reason Pamela was beaten up and things is because the father was pissed off because he knew Jason wasn't his real son. And she wouldn't talk about how that happened. She kept trying to convince him, no, that he was the father, and he just could not accept that. So, again, this is me as a storyteller, coming up with a mythology that, people either accept or don't accept.
You know what? It's interesting you bring this up. I gotta share this with you. I just had a YouTuber on my show, Troy Oikel. He's out of Oregon, and he came on my show. He had an interesting theory about the franchise that I actually think is brilliant. He always considered Jason in part 2 was not Jason. He says this is Elias, because when he comes through the window, you kind of see like a little facial hair, like a beard, and this and that. He said that he believes that his theory is that Pamela Voorhees retaliated on him, and although thought she killed him, got rid of his body, he turned out to be alive, and she raised Jason on her own. And the scene where he's in the shack, and she's seeing in part 2 where she's seeing the vision when he's just barely conscious at all, next to death. Troy was saying that he says that what he's visualizing is what when she was soothing Jason after an attack. And I thought it was interesting because, he tracks down Alice at the beginning of part 2, something I can't see Jason doing, especially now. And it wouldn't be far-fetched that he got Jason out of the lake and raised him in that little shack. Mm-hmm. And then it wouldn't be far off that he tracked down Alice, which is believable, and that I asked him all these questions with his theory, and he says he believes that that Elias died at the end of part 2. Jason started the killing spree in part 3 and learned from his father, which I thought was kind of an interesting theory. And he also pointed out in part 5, he said, Roy is not exactly just this character that comes in as an ambulance driver, because you notice Roy's son is handicapped, the one that gets killed there at the halfway house. He says, Jason is handicapped. What if Pamela was having an affair with Roy?
Okay.
This guy really went into detail, and when he did this, I had to have him come on the show and talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like looking at a sculpture or a painting and going, you know what this is? This is what the artist intended. Mm-hmm. And you have a complete theory that you go, yeah, that's great. And any artist will say, if that's what you see in it, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I can't say what he's saying is what was intended from the writing and what they were trying to do with it, but certainly you could put together a particular, theory based on stuff the way you're seeing it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very cool. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. And I do want to plug one thing. There's a fan-funded film called Friday the 13th Vengeance.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
On Friday the 13th of September, me and C.J. Graham and Jason Brooks, who plays the Jason in that particular thing, are all going to be appearing in Blairstown at the new Friday the 13th Museum for the premiere of the film. But they've got some theories in there that I think are very cool. They've come up with some twists on this that you go, you know what, that's a great idea. I didn't think of it like that. And, they contacted me because they really wanted to play up Jason's father and got C.J. Graham, who was Jason in mind, to play his father. And then Jason Brooks plays Jason. And there's a cameo that I make at the very beginning of the movie where I actually do a scene with C.J. Graham as Jason's father, and I'm the caretaker, in the cemetery. So there's a lot of very in things about it, and there's a lot of kind of references to My Friday and things in it. but these are all guys who just are fans who are passionate about it and raise the money and put part of the money to the Children's Hospital up in Seattle. And, it's really, I'm hoping it comes out as good as I think it could. They're putting, they got Harry Manfredini to do the music.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's still being put together, but there's definitely some very cool ideas and some super intense kills and lots of nudity and, all kinds of what the fans, I think, are going to want to see.
Steve Dash is in this one, is he not?
Yes, he is. Yes, Steve Dash is in it as well.
Last role.
I think Amy Steele, I think, is actually going to be. I think it's Amy Steele who's going to do a scene in there.
Ah.
I could be wrong on that.
I love Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're trying to do the same thing that Deborah Voorhees, is doing too with her 13 Fanboy. Put a lot of alumni, into the movie, so the fans will obviously get a kick out of seeing, what these people look like now.
Actually, I'm a co-producer on 13 Fanboy.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah, I've had Debbie Sue Voorhees on 3 times. I'm not saying I'm the first one. I don't know, but I know I'm one of the first ones to hear about 13 Fanboy, and I became a co-producer because I had a big crush on Tracy Savage from the 3rd film, and
oh yeah,
yeah, I've had her on my show, and when I found out she's in this, I was like, okay, I got to get this on my resume, but
oh yeah, she got Corey Feldman to come in there, and she's got Dee Wallace.
I've met Dee Wallace and had her on here too, yeah.
So I mean, she's, and I think the whole storyline that she's got going, I'm very proud of her that she's pulled this together and has raised the amount of money that she's raised to do it. So she contacted me just recently and wants to use, I have a band called The Sloth, and we have an album called Back from the Grave, and there's a song on there called Haunted, and she contacted me about, if she could get the, get use of the song to put into her film, which I go, yeah, I'd love to, have a small part to do with the film.
Yes.
So that'll be in there as well.
And Tom Matthews is in this, and so is C.J. Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, I'm very, very excited, and I'm proud to be part of this movie. I'm not going to make it down for the premiere because of my schedule here, but every time I see an up...
When is the premiere of that?
Probably next year.
Next year? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're shooting for October 2020, I think. I think there's a Friday the 13th in there somewhere.
Oh, so it's still a ways away. I didn't know that.
I don't know. Now, don't quote me. That's my thoughts, but I could be way off on that too. But seeing what they've shot and stuff, some of the photos and stuff, I'm pretty excited about this.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and I must have interviewed about 10 people from the film before it even came into fruition. So, yeah, I'm quite excited.
Well, let me ask you, because you're obviously a big fan as well as kind of personality on your own here with the show. Mm-hmm. With all the fan-funded films that are coming out, which I kind of lost count after 10. Mm-hmm. What do you think about all that? That's there's so many different sort of Jason stories and different people he's confronting, and some of them, a couple I've seen, are absolutely surreal. I mean, it's like like an art film almost, and then others are just kind of hardcore. And I think there's one that Jason and Michael Myers have a battle. And and the stunt work is incredible. I mean, the fight goes on forever. And I mean, but what do you think? Of these things? Have you seen any of them? Or
well, you know what? Not only have I seen Never Hike Alone, Vincent DeSante has been on my show. I was really impressed with Never Hike Alone.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah,
he really kind of broke ground with that.
But I'm looking forward. You know what it is? People are sick and tired of this stupid lawsuit situation. And I love Victor Miller. I've had him on the show, but people are sick and tired of the lawsuit. I don't think Jason X left a good taste in very many people's mouths. I call it the Room of the Friday franchise. I think people want to go back to something that's scary, something that's fun. And Vincent DeSante did a really good movie, and I'm looking forward to Vengeance. The fact that they've got the Harry Manfredini and even Tom Matthews. Have you seen Never Hike Alone?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, Tom Matthews making a cameo in that.
Yeah, nobody told me, so I hit the floor, and I was invited to a screening by Vincent, who was the big fan of Jason Lives, and a number of people, who saw me before the movie started go, "Have you seen this yet?" And I go, "No." He goes, "You're gonna be surprised. There's some great surprises in this," and there was a couple like things that were sort of referenced to my Friday, and I thought that was it. And then suddenly Tom shows up, and I'm going, "Holy shit!" I couldn't believe it. So that definitely had an influence too on me. That Tom is appearing in so many of these different things now. That when I was writing, my next Friday, I actually decided I wasn't going to do the Tommy Jarvis thing because he's doing it with all these other ones, and they sort of got there first. So I'm going, all right, well that's the way it is, and then had to come up with a different angle on it.
I don't know. I bring him back. I would encourage you to bring him back.
I mean, people are going to go crazy. Is he an ambulance driver? Is he this? He's that? There's like they take it very seriously.
Yeah.
And I didn't want fans to go, well, wait a minute, why is he this and he's this? I kind of respect when somebody establishes something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, that's what kind of goes into the minds of the fans. And Vincent has done so well with Never Hike Alone that I think a lot of people would look at it as a kind of a legit, Friday.
I do too. Yes,
episode,
I do.
right?
Yeah.
And he's working now on, I guess, a feature version of that, which I guess continues from that point on, or maybe it's completely unique and fresh from Hike Alone. I'm not sure.
But I think the problem is people are sick of the lawsuit. I've never played the game, but I've seen it. I know people have been frustrated with this lawsuit. And I think that is why the fan films are coming. And let's face it, these fan films, a lot of them are better than some of the feature films. Like, I'm sorry, but they're Jason X is at the bottom of the pile for me. I can look at it and laugh. Yeah. But I will say this.
They were running out of ideas, and somehow there was that thing about, well, we can't go back to the camp again. We've got to take it someplace else. So thus, he went to Manhattan, and he went to outer space, and he went to hell. So, none of those things to me have a whole hell of a lot of logic, although I had, high hopes for Rob Hedden's, Manhattan, because from what I understood, literally it was going to, take place in Manhattan, and he got there through these kind of strange circumstances, and yet they weren't, able to afford to actually do it the way they had planned originally.
Mm-hmm.
So, for a lot of people, I know it was disappointing that he was on a boat, although there was some great stuff that the movie did. I think Rob accomplished a lot with the the limitations that he had to deal with. But I mean, I felt like with Part 6, I wanted to go back to the to the terrain and see what I could do and bring back Jason in a way that now he's unstoppable. And the one thing I try to say to people all the time, I never intended him to be a zombie. I was thinking, as you had mentioned, more of the Frankenstein thing, that, he was resurrected in this unique way that he's basically unstoppable. Bullets and, heavy aggression and stuff, you can't stop him, but it's not like the zombie type of thing where he's like, completely zoned out, the other term we use for zombie, or does he need to eat brains or feed on human flesh? So, I've always looked at the, zombie as being, what George Romero kind of put on the map. And Jason, isn't a zombie in that same way. But, you can't tell people what they want to believe. And if they like that idea that, there's the pre-zombie Jason and then there's a zombie Jason, and because I don't know what you would call him, it's another term for, Frankenstein or resurrected body. It's if you want a simple term. So I guess that's where the zombie thing came about.
Well, Adam Marcus had told me that he wanted to bring, wanted Jason Goes to Hell to have Tommy Jarvis in it, but because Paramount had sold the rights to New Line, he wasn't able to get the rights to the Tommy Jarvis character. So he loved your film, I'll say that.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. A very funny guy. His stuff is just so off the wall. Very, very talented guy.
Well, if you haven't seen Secret Santa, I give it very high praise.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely check it out based on your recommendation. Yeah, for sure. But there are, there was all those different restrictions that happened even back after I finished mine, and they asked me about doing, Jason Beats Freddy, and I said, well, I don't know how you're going to do it with New Line. They said, well, we're trying to work something out between Paramount and New Line, and, it didn't happen. So obviously it took years before that could occur. When I did part 6 also, the idea is that we were going to reprise John Shepard, in the part of Tommy Jarvis. And, it sort of depends on who you talk to. I mean, some people say he just flat out didn't want to do another one, that it wasn't a great experience, and he wasn't interested in doing another one. And then others say that he would have done it, but he was asking for more money than Paramount wanted to pay. So I don't know what's the truth. But either way, to my benefit, I got Tom Matthews, who to me really defined the part and had the right amount of energy and understanding of the humor that I wrote and things. So, he to me was such a great find. It was certainly worth it. And John did a good job on part 5. But it was a very different character. I mean, the way he was playing it, because he's not motivated in the same way that Tom Matthews was in mine.
Well, Tom Matthews is definitely beloved by fans, and people love him. And like I said, I've had him on here. I think he's a great guy. Was Melanie Kahneman ever approached for part 6?
It never came to me.
Okay.
She mentioned that that she was kind of tied to one of the other characters, and I can't think of what it was. That there were a couple, and if she was tied to Tommy Jarvis on that.
She was the heroine of the 5th one.
Of the 5th one,
Yeah.
But there was something that she had said, because I met her at some signing someplace, and she said because they didn't have the one character, they couldn't use hers the way she put it. And I don't know. I mean, I was never told this is what you got to do. I just kind of went off on my own and said, I'm going to introduce all these different camp people, and that there's going to be a sheriff, and it's his daughter, that Tommy gets involved with.
Well, I think he definitely brought something interesting. Again, I got to bring up the car chase too. I love the where Megan is just speeding with the car there, and Tommy Jarvis has got his head down, and I love the fact because it takes you out of the movie, and suddenly you're getting a little bit of depth between a rebellious daughter and her sheriff of a father.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, had I a bigger budget and more time, that car chase would have probably been a little more elaborate. But for even to have a little bit of one, or even the underwater fight, or whatever the different elements I was trying to add to the movie, I just had to do it within the restrictions of how much time and money that we had. So I tried to really emphasize, the humor in the car, where she goes, "Get down," and pulls his head down, and he takes a look at her crotch and says, "Okay, whatever you say," And so there's a lot of, just kind of light sexual, humor that I was trying to play at the same time of doing the chase and having the other cop finding humor, and it's his daughter that's got the very person that they're going after in the car with her.
Well, they often say that the girl that doesn't have sex, the girl that doesn't do drugs, the good girl survives. And of course, Megan was not the good girl. I always found that funny that Carrie Noonan was killed off, and she seemed to be the good girl.
Yeah, exactly. She was. And, Carrie will say, I don't know if she said this on your show or not, but, Carrie always says that Paula really didn't die. You never saw her body. You just saw this blood mass, made to think, she was killed. And she said, but she's actually off in the forest someplace, as a hermit, which I found also very funny. But yeah, the thing is to me, you set up certain characters and you go, well, they can't kill her. They did? Oh my God. And obviously, by killing her was the thing that made you think, well, if they're killing the nice girl, are they also going to kill one of those kids, or what's going to happen? But I did not want to cross that line, that children actually were going to be hurt by Jason. In fact, I have this sort of theory myself that, Jason was one of those kids when things sort of, changed in his life, when he obviously, drowned and wasn't being taken care of by the counselors. So he still has kind of this innocent and affinity towards children. So that whole relationship that he has with the little girl there is just kind of looking at her and let the audience wonder what's going through his head right now.
Yeah. No, that was a great scene, but saying the prayer and he disappears. I love that, the power of God, But and yet again, the situation with the cops there in the climax, you've got the cops. You got 3 cops going after them. A lot of shootouts. I often wonder why the deputy wasn't brought into this. I know he's there guarding Megan at the station, but I'm kind of like, did he need to be there? Because I wouldn't have mind seeing him use that little laser gun there, that little thing with the red pointer on it.
I mean, why wasn't he at the scene?
Yeah.
Well, they lock him in the cell. When they exchange things, and Tommy takes the keys for the cell and drops them a distance away and just leaves him stuck in that cell. I actually did shoot a scene where you see him, and this was for kind of the last tag, like after the movie's completely done.
Oh, okay.
And, you've seen the end credits, and then there's like one more thing if you stayed through all the credits, where you actually see Rick Colon, in the cell, and he's like yelling, and he grabs the blanket and he's trying to throw the blanket and, attach it, to have the blanket attached to the keys to pull him to him, and he screws up and lets go of the blanket, and now he's really angry. And then you hear a door open up and he gets relieved that, oh, sheriff is back. And then the look on his face as we start the movie on his face of, that's not the sheriff. And then we go out. So leaving the audience to wonder, is that Jason? Does he come up out of the water? Who is that? Just to, give it a little button, and it's kind of like what happened to him. But, the decision was again made that, let's put him down at the bottom of the lake and, let somebody else figure out how he gets out. So there are times when one Friday, where they cut out a bunch of the stuff, and so when they show it on TV, they'll include that scene in there to make up the time, which I thought was sort of interesting.
Is there any possibility that they would stick that scene in the Blu-ray or something there in the future?
I think it is.
Is it?
I think so. Yeah, because I tried to give them back as many things as that were cut for the different versions of special edition and super special edition and deluxe special edition and collector's special edition deluxe. They mined this thing for everything they could, which I personally don't like because it makes the fans have to keep buying it over and over and over again. And there's only maybe 1 or 2 things that are different. And I've done like 3 commentaries on the film over the years. And, come the third one, it's like, I don't know what more to say, you just kind of, told basically all the stories and stuff. But I think they included it there, as well as on one of them, they included the VHS tape that I had that had some of the scenes before they were completely cut down by the MPAA. So you got a little more of like, when the cop's head is squeezed, you actually see the skull snap up and you see a bit of the brain matter come up, which was cut out, and the longer version of the sheriff being bent backwards, that was cut down. And there's a few things where, you see additional frames that, were taken out, but there wasn't like one full kill that was lost or anything like that. they had much more issue on Part 7, with the MPAA really cutting that down.
Yeah, I wish the MPAA would just. I don't know. It's this whole thing of control, and people attacking R-rated movies, and getting back to Christianity. I'm sorry, but I hate Pure Flicks. Their movies are awful. I mean, yeah. So, if they don't like R-rated films, they should make their films better. And if Fireproof is their example of better, I'm sorry, I'm not buying.
Yeah, it's like I was approached at one point, to do a faith-based film, which I would definitely do, but I just want it to really be honest and really be human, not feel like everybody is like special, as opposed to just going through the pains of life and the need to have some spirituality in your life and having something happen that you feel like if I didn't pray, this might have not happened, and give the audience sort of a chance to go, you know what, I want to believe too. You don't make it so preachy that you go, oh, please. You make it so that the audience, like a good ghost story. It's like when they go, listen, there's no such thing as ghosts, and we're sitting there going, yes, there is, because we see what's going on, and we want to believe. And I think that's the whole thing too with faith, is that you've got to accept something on faith when you have no proof. And all that, I think, is so important to the whole, human race. It's just, you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe that there's a greater power than you. All the things that AA was founded on, all make sense. And I watched a lot of people over the years, because I go to Al-Anon, and I'm not a drinker myself, but I've certainly been involved with so many over the years. And, that message for a lot of people who had very difficult childhoods, where, drinking parents, and yet they were, hardcore Christian or Jewish, or, the religion was a huge part of their growing up. And yet there was this other side of, the parents that were sort of self-destructive and things that might have been passed down from the grandparents, and just like racism and things. So much of that is just, what you learn, from your parents or your grandparents. And, it takes a long time to get that out of people. It's what's frightening.
And, of course, bringing Alice Cooper in to do He's Back, the Man Behind the Mask. I got to say, you had some great music in that movie. But Alice Cooper, what a great addition to the franchise.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to approach him, on my next one, too, because it's like, I just think, nobody kind of epitomizes the whole, horror thing in rock and roll than he does. And I was very fortunate. I'm very blessed, actually, to get him on the movie and give us those additional songs, as well as writing Man Behind the Mask.
Yes.
And it's one of my great joys of being able to sing Man Behind the Mask in the band, and the fans just love that, because, I can do a fairly close Alice voice. I wouldn't say 100% spot on, but, I've got a pretty gravelly voice, and I've had many times people go, oh, you must have been a big Alice fan. I go, no, that's just the way I sing. I'm very much in that same sounding, gruff sounding voice.
And I love the James Bond reference for the credits, too. I think that's great. How did you come up with that?
I guess because one of the biggest influences in my life was when my father took me to see Dr. No.
Okay.
I was 12 years old, and I loved that movie and all the other ones, basically the Sean Connery ones, some of the Roger Moore ones, and then it always stuck with me as the definitive franchise. The kind of thing that we wanted to keep seeing James Bond, in different parts of the world, and different hot women, and different new gags and effects and stunts and stuff. So when I was coming up with something I wanted to do for the titles, I suddenly just thought, wouldn't it be cool if I did the James Bond thing, but instead it would be Jason. And instead of a gun, it's the machete that, he cuts across. And, it just kind of came out of that, my love for James Bond, and wanting to also tell the audience right from the beginning that, look, we're going to have fun with this movie. This is not taking itself that serious. There'll be some scares and stuff, but much more like a fun house or a roller coaster ride. less than, something where we're celebrating gore and the darker side of humanity, trying to really make everybody have some positive virtues about them, so you really don't want to see them die. You really go, oh, gee, why'd they have to, kill him? He was funny,
I liked Whitney. Are you still in touch with him?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. We've had a friendship since I came back from Paris, where we were both in the same theater company together, which would have been 73, I think, 72, 73. So, and I'd go and see the shows that he'd direct at Pasadena City College, where he was a professor of theater over there. And, we stay in touch, and, I'll see comments on my Facebook from him when things he's seen, or I comment on his stuff when he puts something out. So, yeah, we've been very long-term friends.
Yeah, I loved him in the film, especially the tree branch that breaks off. He tries to put it back on the tree.
Yeah, that was totally Whitney, who was totally inspired by Buster Keaton. I mean, it was very much Buster Keaton type move. And, Whitney does a great Buster Keaton and an amazing Jack Benny as well. He's got that down.
And another guy I really liked in the movie, Bob Larkin, as the caregiver. He's got some of the funniest lines in the movie.
Yeah, well, he was such a great gruff character. I'm a huge fan of Frank Capra. In fact, he's really been my mentor. Despite being a horror guy, what I learned from Frank Capra is, you've got to like the people, and then you'll like the story. And also, you got to people it with characters that are fun to be around. And Bob definitely was in that category of, gruff and all this, but there was something kind of a little dumb about him, the way he played him, and but very strong, opinionated. And I had a mechanic that was very much like the Bob Larkin character. So I was kind of pushing him in that direction, but much of it is obviously his creation of what he did with the material. And it was kind of a joy to bring him back for that scene where he gets killed, because when we shot the movie, that was not in the script. He was, he survived because he was in the scene with Jason's father at the very end. But when we screened it at Paramount for the initial screening for a crowd, which was, through the roof, it was just, I couldn't even hear the movie for all the yelling and screaming and stuff that was going on through it. Frank Mancuso, said, well, I want to put 3 more kills in the movie. And I go, wait a minute, who are we going to kill? And he goes, I don't know, you figure it out. Introduce somebody. I said, well, I don't wanted to do that. I was trying to avoid that. Plus, I got 13 kills. I was trying to stay very authentic to my own little set of rules and things. And he goes, no, we got to get 3 more kills back and get into that thing. So that's when we decided to, have Bob Larkin, and we shot that in Los Angeles in Griffith Park. And then the 2 women, the guy and girl that are being engaged in the park, and and Jason, obviously they see Jason having just killed Bob Larkin's character and come after them. And that's, Cindy Kenya, who plays the girl, who's Vinnie Gustafaro, plays, the deputy's wife. So, and Roger Rose, who's, he was doing the looping for us with a loop group, and I just found him so funny and stuff. I said, gee, we got to add more stuff. Would you like to play this character? Which he did, and did a great job.
I also loved
all kind of additions.
I also loved Darcy DeMoss and Tom Fridley. That scene was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys know that Tom Fridley was related to John Travolta when you guys cast him?
I guess I was the only idiot that didn't know that. I mean, I looked at his eyes, and he's got the Travolta eyes. There's no question. But I never knew that until way after the fact, after we shot and everything. And now I've become very close with both Darcy and Tom Matthews and CJ. I mean, it's like, and Carrie, and it's just incredible that we've, after 33 years, we still remained, in touch and friends, and I mean, constantly, seeing each other at the different conventions and stuff, as well as, getting together, privately. So, it's like when I learned that, I went, oh my God, why didn't I see that? And how strange. We've got the John Travolta, as his uncle, and then we got, obviously Ron Palillo from Welcome Back, Kotter in there, but certainly wasn't intended at the time. But they made such a great couple, on screen. They just really bonded, and it was just very funny, which is what, I was hoping that I'd get.
And it's funny, you got no nudity in this film either, and yet that scene there is about as sexualized as you can get.
Yeah, well, that was interesting because people have said, what are you, some Puritan that you didn't want to put any nudity in there? And I go, no. I mean, the fact is, this was a lovemaking scene in the motorhome.
Mm-hmm.
My original intention was that, you see the thing bouncing up and down, and you cut in, and she's riding Tom, and and basically both of them were going to be naked. And then, suddenly all the lights go out, and it's like, oh shit, what is that? And they, kind of throw clothes on and, go outside. But when we came to do the scene, I said to Darcy, very respectfully, because I feel like this is something that, it has to be approached respectfully. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, are you okay doing this? And she goes, well, I'm kind of not. And I never signed anything in the beginning saying that, I had to do this or the scene was going to be nudity. And I go, I didn't even know that. Okay. And she goes, is that really going to be a big problem for you? And I go, you know what? I'm doing comedy here. And you're writing him, and you're talking about this song, and, can you last till the end of the song? And, another 5 minutes or whatever the line was.
Mm-hmm.
That the fact that she's not, and, and she's pulling on him, and the fact that they were so, hot that they just, without even taking their clothes off, they jumped into it. So, I was fine with it, and it didn't make a big thing. And then sort of as the years have gone by, when people have trivia questions, okay, which Friday the 13th had no nudity in it? Where it was always looked upon that, they have sex and then Jason kills you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to have sex, then you got to be naked. And part 5 was so exploitive,
Yep.
I felt, in that regard, that I, again, kind of went the other direction. And, people have a problem with that. And, I'm sorry, but that was just kind of, my vision of it. And I wanted to be respectful to Darcy. And,
Actually, don't apologize, because you want me to tell you something, and maybe I'm naive, but until that was actually brought up, I think, in Crystal Lake Memories, it never occurred to me that there was no nudity in it. Maybe it's because I was so engaged with it. And you know what? You had a hot scene there without it, so don't apologize for that. I think it still worked regardless.
Yeah. No, it's kind of the way it went, and it sort of became, this unusual Friday in that regard. But then again, we got children in there. We got a lot of stuff that,
Mm-hmm.
hadn't been in before. And I tried to really, give the movie itself stuff that felt more like a movie rather than just an exploitive, low-budget, slasher movie. And as a result, as the years have gone on, people seem to really love the fact that it kind of exists as a movie in and of itself. And
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people, it's kind of like the intro movie. If, see the first one, because that's a completely different thing without Jason, except at the very end. And then if you want to see like kind of just a classic Friday with all the elements, then, usually mine is shown, which I'm, very honored by. I personally like part 4. I think that
I love part
did
4, yeah.
Did a great job with that, and all the elements are in there. And you really don't see Jason that much on screen. I mean,
No.
it's interesting how he kind of, kept him, just when he needed him out, he would come, and I was using him much more in a, unstoppable force, like, the shark in Jaws or Terminator, the way CJ and I kind of worked out the character, that he was very almost robotic, not quite, but definitely, set in this sort of army fashion that he's going to get the guy, and if anybody gets in his way, they're going down. So, that all kind of was a different way to, to approach it.
It's funny. I was frustrated with Freddy versus Jason, the fact that Ronnie Yu, number one, should have had Kane Hodder reprised. That was a controversy. But I found out that when he went to do this movie, he had not seen either of the franchise, so he watched A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, and he watched Friday the 13th, the first one. Now, the Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, that's fine. You're getting the gist of Freddy. But I'm like, you're watching the original Friday the 13th. Like, how is he going to get the gist of Jason out of that? I would have handed him either part 4 or part 6.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought, I would figure he did his homework like I did, where I watched everything.
He did no homework.
No, that's interesting. I didn't know that. But yet that was the one that, when we look back, I guess that made the most amount of money because people really wanted to see these two guys, square off.
Yeah. But I think he watched the wrong, I like the original, but still. You kind of, you want to get the gist of Jason. I'd say the 4th or the 6th one be the ones to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I was going to say that death scene for Darcy DeMoss, when her face goes in the side of the RV, of course, which ends with that great shot of Jason coming over the top of the RV. That's a wonderful shot, by the way.
Thank you. It's become kind of, and I kind of knew it at the time I was shooting it. It was literally the last shot of the movie. Mm-hmm. The sun was coming up. If you look in the background, you can see the sky starting to turn blue instead of black. And just that whole thing of, I sort of looked at it like, the caveman standing on top of the dinosaur that he's just killed and having this sort of, stature about him that, I took care of business here. And, with the fire going on around underneath. And whenever I see that image, I go, and now I'm really proud that kind of represents, the force of Jason, that he can bring, anything down and, and even an inanimate object that's like a, RV. But everything that led up to that, with obviously Darcy's kill and the, and Tom Fridley's, listen to this, and then bang, goes a knife into his ear. All that stuff kind of led up to that. So it was a sequence that, like the mud puddle that Nancy goes into, and with the spear and the American Express art, that whole thing with Tony Goldwyn. That's all like you can just lift that whole thing out, and it's like a little short that's really kind of encapsulates everything about Jason and setting up people and kind of liking them and then seeing them get killed in a very unusual way.
I love that line Nancy gives too. Like, I've seen enough horror movies to know that anybody wearing a mask is never friendly. Very self-aware, and it worked,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't think, to be really honest with you, Greg, I mean, I was scared to death that this audience, that loves these films were going to have an issue with the humor and, sort of satiring the whole thing and having, the caretaker break the fourth wall and look at the audience. Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
I love it.
Complete, put down in a funny way of all of us that love this kind of stuff. But that ultimately, was something that people did love, and actually we got good reviews. Mm-hmm. They still criticize the fact that, it's all about watching people get killed, and they, most critics can't go along with that notion. But they say you can't hate a movie that's making fun of itself as it's telling the story. And I was, years later when I wanted to direct, what at the time was called, Scary Movie, and then it became Scream. Mm-hmm. I sort of went, well, I kind of did this already, when I read the script. And then when I came back to try to see if it was still available, because I couldn't find any other thing, it had gone to Wes Craven. But when I met Kevin Williamson many years later, he said, well, I gotta tell you that it was your Friday the 13th that had a huge influence on me when I wrote Scary Movie, i.e. Scream. So I considered that like, okay, well, my instincts were right. I was seeing a bit of myself, in there, but, very unique. I mean, I Scream is its own thing, and the whole thing that he did with it, I think, was just, incredible. And they've obviously got a lot of sequels out of that.
Yeah, talk about when Darcy DeMoss gets the face into the RV, the process of doing that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was, they as far as I understood, because I literally wasn't standing by when they did that, because that was like a special effect, and obviously it was described exactly the way it was, is that he pushes her face towards the mirror, so we kind of see her. She gets to see her own, death. And then, it pushes out through the metal. And so a lot of that, of course, was the sound effect, too, of metal bending and stuff. But it was like a plastic mold, and they had literally cast her face and then make a heavy, I don't know if it was plaster or it wasn't cement, but it must have been just very reinforced plaster. And they heated up the mole, and as I understand it, they kind of pushed that into it, but they did it like underwater, so that it had a slower effect to it. They had it all worked out, and
oh wow,
in some wonderful magic trick, wonderful illusion that just really really worked, and there wasn't any other kill that was quite like that. So again, that to me, I was trying to do that. It was much harder trying to do it now, with the recent thing I wrote, because there's been so many unusual kills, and the one in was it Jason X, that where they go into where the girl's face is frozen?
Oh yeah, yep,
yeah. I mean, that's to me in that same category of wow, I never saw that before. So when I was writing this new one, it's like, God, what do you come up with? What else can you do to a human body that hasn't already been done? And then all these, TV shows over the years and the cable shows now that are able to, do effects better than a lot of the features have done, because their budgets are such that, and they got these incredible experts that know how to do stuff. It's really hard to come up with something new.
Yes. Well, a lot of people regard, I find, parts 4 and 6 and 2 seem to be the top ones that people like when I see these rankings on YouTube, so, yeah. I wanted to talk about the new script idea, or the new script you wrote for a new Friday the 13th without any spoilers, and if this lawsuit ever gets behind us, I would love to see you come back and direct another one, because of your humor and because of your pop culture references and because of the way you shape characters. Do you have that all in this one as well?
I hope so. I mean, that was my intention, is to try to not repeat what I did the first time, but, take it to a kind of a different level. And, bear in mind that there's been all these other ones that have come since mine, happened. And I didn't want to do another Friday, because I kept saying, every time I was asked, I don't have a fresh take on it. I don't know kind of what I would do that hasn't already been done, or just, kind of felt lame to me. And finally, it was, I don't know, I want to say it's almost 2 years now. It's been since I, maybe a year and a half or so, that I came up with this concept. And then suddenly that idea, caused another idea to go along with that, and another and another. So there's about 5 or 6 things that have not been done in a Friday and are kind of unique to the franchise. What I can tell you is, and this is one bit of fresh information, because it came out that, I've got an all-female cast, which is something that, not particularly brand new. I mean, The Descent did it, and there's been others, that have done it, but it's not something that's unique to it is unique to the Fridays, because it's usually always guys, somehow involved, or cops or whatever. So that was one thing. And then, of course, setting it in the snow in the winter.
I've been waiting for that. Yeah, I can't believe they haven't had, like, Jason break out of the ice or something like that. And I'm like, they've never done that before. So I'm glad you're touching on that.
Yeah, I kind of, and I approach things. I mean, there's logic and reality, and then there's movie logic and reality, and you try to balance those two things so that it's like you believe it because you want to believe it, not because it's necessarily really realistic. And so, obviously a case in point is bringing Jason back with a lightning bolt. It's like, would that happen in real life? No, but do we want to believe it? Yeah, because Frankenstein, that's how he came back, and it's like we're taking movie logic, and running with it. So there's those elements that I have in the film, but I also wanted to introduce some characters that we haven't seen before in there, and also grounded in still the basic structure of what, a Friday the 13th, what's expected out of that. And I think structure is so important in movies, because there's always, been since early plays, the 3-act structure where you set up, the characters and the situation, and then something happens that starts to spin the story into the middle section, which is all the confrontation and the conflict that goes on with the characters and what they're trying to accomplish. And then the resolution, the climax, of what occurs, who has survived, who gets what they want, all those things. So there's a basic story structure. And then with the Fridays, there's a kind of a structure too, with the characters that you're introducing, and you're going, well, I know they're going down, or no, they're not going to kill that one. And you try to make it, surprising when it does happen, and who does actually, survive in the end, which is, kind of a bigger story about life. Can you push the edge of the envelope and still walk away, unscathed, or is there a price to pay? And that's just kind of, just basic storytelling and biblical storytelling in a way, because there's so many things in the parables and stuff that fall into our own lives. So I, as I said before, I wanted to set it in the winter and have a really good reason why it's in the winter. And I've had a few people go, well, you can't have a summer camp in the winter. And it's like, duh, yeah, you're right, you can't. So it isn't a summer camp. Does it occur in the Crystal Lake vicinity? Yes. Do I have another reason why they're up there? They're not camping out in the snow? Yes, I do. And I've also tried to make an element of claustrophobic, aspects to it. And for the people that were, kind of critical over the fact that, I must be playing to the times by having it be an all-female cast. Well, I'm not playing to the times, because the movie's actually going to be set in 1998, which is 13 years from when I did mine in 86. So I've kind of created my own, mythology, without necessarily following what happened with all the films after mine.
Okay.
But kind of a story in and of itself, that is, that was reported, happening. And there's it all kind of depends where certain people go, well, didn't he go into outer space? It's like, you believe that? That was just a story, or did he really go to Manhattan? You think Jason would leave the force and go to Manhattan? Well, yeah, if you saw the movie, he did, but if you're following any kind of logic, no. So I always believe that these things have, a mythology and a legend to them, and it sort of becomes what you want it to be. And I have my own feelings about, how I wanted to play that out, which is what I tried to incorporate into this. But this group of characters, as opposed to mine, in mine, and I think in some of the other ones, they've never heard of Jason. There is, through the movie, they don't go, that's Jason out there, like I did in Part 6. They're completely, innocent to it. So it's all the more frightening about what the hell is this thing, the person, whatever the hell it is, trying to do to us. So I've given Jason, a different kind of agenda from what he had in mind, but still very much that, he has a reason for doing what he's doing. And that, again, is, without giving any spoilers away, is kind of what drives the story along.
Actually, 13 years after Jason Lives would have been 1999.
86? 99?
Yeah.
I thought it was 98.
13 years. It'd be 99.
But I already have that wrong. I thought it was 98 the way I counted it. Huh.
98 would have been 12 years after. 98 would have been 12 years after. And then 99 would have been 13 years.
How did I figure that?
I think when you figured...
I was thinking 85?
I think you counted 86 as one, as opposed to going from 86 to 96, which would have been 10 years. You add 3 years and it'd be 99. So I think you kind of counted 86 as one, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I stand corrected, and and man enough to admit it. Yeah. So I'll certainly have to fix that little thing.
It's not a big fix, you know?
Because initially, it's interesting. That's so interesting because I remember when I was working on it, I initially wanted it to be 99 because I was looking at the fact that everything was going to change, and there was this great fear about 2000, and all the computers, everything was going to go down, and and so that the characters even referenced that in it, that we're heading into the 21st century, and things are going to be different now, and all that. But then somehow when I did the math with my film, and that I somehow obviously didn't get that right, which I will now correct.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, you go to 86 to 96 years, you get 10 years, and that's 97, 98, 99. I mean, yeah, 13. So, yeah, it's an honest mistake, but I think you just counted 80.
What a writer, definitely what a writer shouldn't do, and maybe I'll be calling up the Prince estate so I can get Party Like It's 1999.
There you go. There you go. But, Jason in the Snow. I guess if it's an all-female cast, I guess Deputy Cologne will not be in this, will he?
No, he won't. No. I do have a scene. I mean, it's not that I didn't try to come up with stuff over the years where, Megan and Tommy were married, and that either they come back or their kids come back, to the camp. I mean, I had a whole bunch of different variations, and I know some of the fan films are doing that sort of thing too. They're finding different ways of twisting the story, and I know Vengeance has, literally, the Jarvis kids are the ones involved in the story, and which is, I don't think any great spoiler. I think people kind of know that when they were funding the film and stuff, but. I just, I wanted to try to come up with something that, just was sort of fresh all the way around, and I didn't have to try to better a joke that I had in part 6, because, it's like, I'm in the same territory of, references to Jason or whatever, and because that to me just kind of restricts you. But when I was working on it, I had something with Cologne. I had, anybody who hadn't died, I found something that I could do with it. There was going to be, at one point, I had come up with this whole sort of fantasy sequence. I didn't know what to do with it exactly, but if Tom Fridley and Darcy, got away and they weren't killed, what they would be like as a married couple today, and actually use the actors, dealing with the life, beyond, and having something happen. Because again, I'm being friends with them, and they both got such great, personalities, and they both still look so hot, as actors. It'd be just great to see them on the screen together. But I would, literally have to kind of make the in joke, but that they're, they didn't die after all.
Well,
but I know I put those things aside because ultimately I felt, I don't want to just make this overly humorous or overly fantasy. You've got to kind of buy into the Jason mythology and what has happened.
Well, I love the idea that it's Jason and Snow, and I guess the only thing in your way here is the lawsuit.
Yeah. When I finally finished the script, or I was in the final phases of finishing it, at that point, Victor had basically won, and there was a possible appeal that was going to happen. But as time was going on, it looked like Sean and Terror Inc., his company, were not going to do the appeal. And the way it seemed like, if I think I got this right, that Victor basically got the rights to the name Friday the 13th, anything called Friday the 13th he owned, and he could remake the first one, which there was word that he had had a collaboration with somebody. I can't think of who it was. There was some company with that in mind, that they were going to just remake the original.
Mm-hmm.
And then but he didn't have Jason. He didn't have the masked Jason. Sean had that.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I guess that wasn't enough for either, Miller's side with who was, representing him, or with Sean, because I finally got the script done and, was just about to release it when, it was announced that, nope, he's in the appeal, and that can take, months or years before we're going to, see any sort of resolution on this. And I was like, shit, I got this thing all done, ready to go, and then this occurs. So I literally just had to say, I don't want to just say I haven't done it. I want people to know that it's there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe word will get to Sean. Maybe word will get to, to Victor. But is that going to really change what they're trying to do in terms of who owns which rights to what and how much money is going to be made down the line? No. They've got too many people around them on salary that wants to, get the biggest hunk of the pie as possible. So, this will go for a while, and my film is just too expensive to do as a film, fan film. Because if you're lucky, maybe you can raise, $100,000 or whatever. Usually they top off around 50 to 80 or whatever. But to do something in the snow is very difficult, and troublesome, and also I'd have to build sets, for the film, because you can't just stay in the snow all that time.
Yeah.
It melts, and and one day it can be really heavy, and the next day nothing, and it's impossible to really plan. Other than, okay, it's good now. We've got, we can fake some of the stuff that melts, and just get all the scenes that are exterior out of the way, and then go into all the interiors and make that work. And then obviously adding breath and things that that would have to be added to keep the illusion going. So I mean, I've got this. Obviously having done 42 films, I can pretty much plan out what needs to be happening and what I can afford and what can't be afforded. So as a fan film, it just, wouldn't work. So I literally, if I want this one to get done, I just have to wait it out till the rights, get worked out. And as far as I can tell, still it's Warner Brothers and New Line that actually own the distribution of the films. And because they didn't even want to read my script. It's like, nope, until this thing blows over, we don't even want to see anything. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know the fans are pretty frustrated. I know that.
Yeah, it is for anybody that loves these things. But then it puts a huge pressure on what is it going to be. I don't know if you read the script that they were almost about to make in 2009. But I was fortunate that I talked to somebody who managed to get me a copy of the two scripts. There was one that was in 3D, and then there was another one that was, the one that they were actually going to shoot. And I think they even went down to the camp where I shot mine in Covington, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the camp they were going to use and stuff. And then suddenly, they got cold feet because of the lawsuit and pulled it. But when I read the script, I wasn't terribly impressed with it. I mean, I think they had some great stuff in it,
Mm-hmm.
but there was just kind of the way the story was and stuff that it was kind of jumping around from, young Jason to Jason's father, in sort of this kind of piecey way that it was put together. And I thought, God, are the fans going to like this or not? I mean, maybe the style of it, however it was going to go, was going to work. So there is going to be a huge pressure, whether it's mine or somebody else's, of we've waited this long, boy, you better deliver.
Yeah.
This better be something that, we love. And, I'm as confident as I can be as a fan, because when I was writing it, I kept thinking, okay, I'm sitting in, a theater in Hollywood or in New York or Middle America, and I'm watching this with a group of people. Are they going to verbally respond? Because that's a huge thing to me, is to try to get the audiences of today to actually either talk back to the screen, which is probably asking too much, but at least verbally, yelling or, gasping at the same time. It was such a joy, in the 70s and 80s and even into the early 90s when audiences were, a third of the movie. It's like, I got to see this with a good audience. And still to this day, I'll go and, see the horror movies literally on the first day, at the best time. And it's like people go, why do you want to see? Don't you want to see it by yourself, where you're, don't have to deal with all that in the afternoon? I go, no, I want to see it with the folks. I want to see if people are responding. Are they getting up and going to the bathroom? Are they, verbally responding, whatever. So, I mean, I get very disappointed where films that I really like It, didn't have the kind of response that I expected it to have. And I think people have just gotten so passive. And they just kind of watch things, and, if they enjoy it intellectually and not, in loud emotional bursts. And I'm going to try with mine to try to get back, the old roller coaster ride, and hopefully do things that an audience has to respond to in some way. It just, you can't help yourself but gasp. I mean, the one thing I saw when I went and saw it, the 2 times I saw it, is the only time people applauded and really loved something was on the kiss that happened between the 2 characters. And I thought, well, that's interesting. All this great Pennywise stuff, and but they're not screaming or jumping or whatever. And I don't know if it's just that too much television, too much seeing things, that you just go, okay, yeah, so what, or what causes that. But I remember the last thing I saw where I actually heard an audience responding was Paranormal Activity. And that was very simple, because they would have these wide shots like a surveillance camera, and then there'd be some loud boom, that would occur, and that was just unpredicted, that something like that was going to happen. So the audience literally jumped up out of their seats, and that to me was a really great way to do a jump scare, as opposed to opening the door slowly and trying to see if there's anything on the other side, and then suddenly something comes from behind or whatever, sort of the standard, jump scares that we have now, with a loud accompanied sound, which, I noticed from just going to see scary things, scary stories you tell in the dark. I went and saw that twice, and because the first time,
you know what? I'm thinking about seeing that. Is it good?
Is it good? It is designed for people who don't necessarily like horror movies, or that, it's PG-13, so it's, there's no gore, there's no profanity, there's no sex. The main antagonists or protagonists are kids, teenagers. And it basically takes these incredible stories that have been around for 30, 40 years and pulls a couple of them together so that the kids are experiencing something not unlike It, where each person kind of has their own little thing that they fear and, that's going after them. But these stories are being kind of written by this mysterious force of this girl who was abused, and there's all the elements to a really good ghost story, and you can see Guillermo del Toro's hand all over it. I mean, it's very much in his style, and yet this director, who I, saw his Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I don't know if you've seen or not, but that I put literally in my top 5 horror films of all time. I mean, and that's coming very late to the party, seeing something and going, whoa, this is, this is really intense. So I think he kind of pulled back a bit to make it a little more mainstream friendly, or maybe the studios did, or,
That can hurt a horror film, too.
Yeah, the monsters are really good. They've done a great job with those. Those are scary. There's all these sequences that really work, but I mean, I guess if I'm going to be totally honest, I feel like the lead actors just were not as relatable and fun to be with and care about, as like they were in It. I think It did a spectacular job with the casting, and if that girl was the lead in this thing, I would feel very different about the movie. And it's not that they're bad or unprofessional; it's just sort of the choices that are made about the character, how the character perceives things and stuff. And I find that, if you're not rooting for the characters, you're not somehow relating to them on some level, that, you're a bit removed from the emotional aspect of the movie. And I mean, that's kind of the way I looked at it. And I felt that the first time I saw it, and I said, you know what? Fuck me. I'm going to go see it again, see it with a different kind of crowd. And I felt the same thing the second time. And my girlfriend was very anxious to see it. She's been, biting at the bit to see it. So she really liked it the first time. But then when she saw it the second time, she goes, damn it, now I agree with what you're seeing. Because I was so excited the first time. Any flaws, I completely let go of. But now that you put this in my head, now I see, what you're talking about. So, and to me, a movie should get better on the second viewing, not where you go, no, it didn't quite do it for me. But it's done, fairly well, and as they say in the business, it did better than they anticipated in the first week. So hopefully it has legs. Hopefully it becomes a series. I don't know if it'll be a film franchise, but it might be something that Netflix or somebody picks up and does the stories, because there's a ton of stories. And the stories, to me, are far better than trying to jam them all into one film. They're just really, really great stories in and of themselves. And I love the anthology approach, which they didn't do on this. They tried to make it, all one through line.
Yeah. Well, I was going to either go see that or The Kitchen, and I was like going back and forth. And
yeah, Kitchen didn't, and I saw the trailer to it. I went, I don't know if people are going to see this. It's a gimmick again. It's like Ghostbusters, all female, and things. There's a thing to that, and that's part of what, I was concerned about when I said that I have an all-female cast. It's like, well, wait a minute, what are you trying to say, or do, or whatever? And it's like, so I wanted to give you something, that would make this unique without, spoiling certain story aspects or things that would be, easily copied before I even get a chance to get the movie made. Because, I mean, what if it is 2 years before these guys resolve this thing? There's going to be a lot of things that are going to come and go in the fan films. And, the snow aspect, certainly somebody can beat me to the punch on that. But, there's not a whole lot you can do. And I definitely wanted people to know that this is something, to look forward to, because I do, as a fan, want to please the people that love these things. And I also want to make a movie that, works as a movie, and not just a, celebration of killing people.
Something, I'm okay with an all-female cast, and I would love to see it get back to where you have a sole female at the end, because Adrienne King, it was scary just seeing her and all the darkness around her, and trying to figure out, like, she's so vulnerable because she's out there by herself now. Everybody else is dead. I love the fact that you had Tom Matthews and Jennifer Cook at the end of it. But in part 7 and part 8, I got annoyed with the male antagonists at the end. I felt that Kevin Blair in part 7, nothing against him, I felt he got in the way. They could have had a good back-and-forth battle between Lar Park Lincoln as a telekinetic heroine and Jason, and not have him in there. I get annoyed every time he gets tossed against a wall and is just knocked out briefly, and it's like, is it necessary? And the same with Jason Takes Manhattan. I love Peter Mark Richmond in it. I've had him on here twice. I think he's the best part of the movie. But again, nothing against Scott Reeves, but it's like, why not just have Jensen Daggett go mano to mano, or have him kind of like with John Fury in part 2, where he gets knocked out and then, Amy Steele has to fend. Something like that. I miss that in the last few movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've come a long way where it was like amazing that Sigourney Weaver in Alien, was the final survivor and bested all the men on the crew and Veronica Cartwright and stuff. She was it, and this whole thing between the two women, since the alien was supposed to be female, really kind of set the course for things in the future. Mm-hmm. With Linda Hamilton later, and obviously in Terminator and stuff. So we've sort of really gotten used to that fact that women can kick ass, as good as men, sometimes even better.
Yeah.
If you watch some of the fights, between women as opposed to men, it can be brutal and to the death. So it's not necessarily really that fresh of a concept. But again, when people see what I've done with it, why it is the way it is, it totally makes sense. It's not because I'm trying to cash in on any of the fact that okay, we've never seen women because they're women, fight or get involved. It's like, no, that's not what this is. I mean, the females are there because there's nothing, the way the thing's set up, there wouldn't be males there. It's just not logical. Or I could put them in, but it would be sort of like just sticking them in to stick them in, which again, I didn't want to do.
Well, I like your idea. And I hope you get a chance to make it. I've had Victor Miller on here. I like him, Sean S. Cunningham, I never talked to him before. What's your impression of him?
Well, yeah, I've only actually met Sean once, and that was at a signing that I was doing for the Friday thing. And he was very nice. He was very complimentary. He said, I really liked your installment. He didn't go on about it. He didn't make any big thing about it. He was very, close to the vest. But I certainly, can't say any bad words about him. I don't, I know he's, a strong businessman. I know he had a lot to do with getting the game, Friday the game going, and pulling in all these people that were involved with it from the franchise. So it's a twofold problem. On one, it's like Sean's company wanting to hold on to, as much of that as possible, and then the idea that the original writer should be participating a little bit more in what has gone down over the years. And I know he gets credit, and I know he gets, Writers Guild fees and things, because he was credited as the original writer. Mm-hmm. But obviously, the lawyer he's got involved with is the top copyright lawyer in the world, probably in the universe. And this guy, he battles the biggest. So, he is not going to give up without a big-ass fight. And obviously there's enough money, I think, with Sean's company and stuff that they can, battle right back. So unless they come up with some really workable compromise, to let it go, it's not about, we got to hurry up and do this because the fans are upset. They don't care about that. So it's like, let them wait. It is what it is. We're going to work this out. So it could be, within the next month or two, because there's another deadline that's coming up for something that Larry Zertner has brought up. He's the one that gave Jason the mask and free.
Yep.
And he's sort of the authority on the whole legal thing because that's what he does too, is copyright stuff. Mm-hmm. So they're, in the perfect world for me, that would be great. And at the same time, I don't know if there's 50 other Friday the 13th scripts written by various writers that are all sitting there at the starting gate waiting for that moment, and everybody's going to hit it at once. But I'm just hoping that what I've come up with is unique enough that it's like, well, this is going to be something that, even though we're going backwards in time, it's, and not making him present day, it still really works. Because I think what the fans love about it is that sense of nostalgia in a way.
Yes.
That there is that thing that this happened at a different time. And I mean, to me, that's what makes it work. The things that I do love about Scary Stories is that, it's set in 1969. So they get all these, there's more innocence, when you go backwards. And, you can't, get on the computer and do things, even though I have cell phone references in mind because they were out, in 99, which now I'm officially 99.
Mm-hmm.
But, they were, the older Nokia flip phones. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they're a whole different thing than what we're used to. But, you don't get reception when you're in Crystal Lake. So
No.
It doesn't do you any good. So, but, it's just trying to find things that still, make people feel like they're a little more vulnerable, and which is what these things are all about, is vulnerability, and how are you going to possibly fight this thing? How are you possibly going to survive this thing? Which is what, we go to the movies for, is see somebody, make it, where you're feeling in your own life, I've got so many problems, I just want to escape into, a movie reality.
I was talking to Adam Marcus, and one thing he did say that Sean did not like Jason Takes Manhattan, apparently. What is your part in the game? I know you're heavily involved in the game, and fans seem to really like it. What is the part you're playing in it?
Well, I'm not heavily involved in the game as such. Basically, I was approached to write, what I looked at as like a radio play. It's, there's little, like when you accomplish a certain amount of, get to a certain level, you get one of these tapes that you get access to, which has in it these interviews that were done by the police with Pamela Voorhees.
Okay.
So it's them trying to find out what happened, what she knows about what could have caused this happen with her son. She goes on about these damn kids. And I think she actually used fucking kids. They're fucking and not watching my son. And so there's a voice actress that did Pamela Voorhees, Betsy Palmer's voice. I mean, incredibly well. Mm-hmm. So it was really great to hear in my head, what she sounds like, and then actually to hear the recording and going, that's exactly the way she sounds. It's wonderful. And then they had some other actors playing the cops and the detectives and stuff that were talking to her. But that's really, kind of it. It's like little bonuses that you get, and you get each kind of section of the tapes and, listen to them. So, and I tried to, create a different type of story about Jason's father in there that, people were going to hear for the first time.
I think it's cool they brought in Tom Matthews, and they made Tommy Jarvis part of the game in the likeness of Tom Matthews. It shows how much fans loved Tom Matthews in that version of Tommy.
Yeah, he even got involved because they think he didn't like the way he looked, and he goes, "Wait a minute, you can fix that, make that look a little closer to me." And what they ended up with, I think, really is accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. So the script you wrote for this new movie, we're not going to see Jennifer Cook on a big chase on a skidoo?
No.
Well, here's a quote.
Get Jennifer Cook to a any of these conventions. She just doesn't. Her and one that plays Sissy. What's her name? God, Renee.
Renee. I'm not getting her last name here. Actually,
no, either. Blanking. But anyway, she's on.
Renee Jones.
Renee Jones, great.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, incredibly wonderful actress, but she just doesn't want to be associated, with the show, the series, as Jennifer feels the same way. They did manage to get her on Crystal Lake, memories on that tape, but it was a very short interview, kind of on and off, and that's that.
Well, why don't they want to be associated? I mean, it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I think once you have kids and you have a particular, responsibility in your head to not be part of something that was looked at. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but
47.
Okay, so there was a thing about being in a slasher film. It's like you might as well have been in a porn movie. I mean, or animal abuse movie or something. It was really considered the lowest of the low. And as a result, when we were making these movies in the 80s, we figured they were going to come out and then be forgotten. There wasn't going to be any life that was going to go on beyond the initial, screenings. And that was it. And the only good movies that were done were in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and the 40s and the 30s and the 20s, that we were just making a living, and many of the films kind of had that sort of, spirit about, all right, well, we're going to kind of show you the way life is now and put it. And then much to all of our shock, all these years later, the 80s are looked at as like this incredible period with incredible hairstyles and incredible approaches to subjects and all of this stuff that none of us really felt was the case. And, you look at people like Siskel and Ebert doing reviews. I mean, they just were brutal, with them. And they were even brutal with mine as opposed to the other reviewers. But after they kind of tore it apart, they went, we didn't even see this movie because we know what it's going to be. So what's the point of, subjecting ourselves?
It's interesting you bring that up. I've had Uwe Boll on here twice. And Uwe Boll, of course, people petition, get him out, stop directing movies, and blah, blah, blah. Kind of bullied him, but I've had Uwe Boll on twice. I think he's a great guy. But he was talking, there's this whole thing about him boxing his critics. And people really lost sight on what that was all about because he said he didn't box his critics. He boxed the critics that didn't see his movie and panned it anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. And I don't know how many times I've read a review on Friday the 13th, Part 3, where they say another group of camp counselors. There's no camp counselors in it,
Yeah.
Like, that is so irresponsible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, I love, there's a thing when the new Halloween came out,
Mm-hmm.
Curtis was being interviewed, and it was some somewhat notable person on, I don't know if it was Channel 4, or NBC or CBS or whatever, actually said to Jamie Lee Curtis, it's like, well, this must be very nostalgic for you to go and, face Jason once again. And she goes, Michael Myers. And she just has this look on her face like this guy did no homework.
Oh, wow.
So, that's to be expected because this is, for a lot of people, it's like they don't want to hear about it. And I even got to a point in my career when I was doing so much television that my agent said, they're not taking you because they don't want some slasher director doing a Hallmark Hall of Fame, or they don't want somebody doing a Santa Claus kids movie that has a slasher movie on, their credits. So literally they would completely downplay it or try to take it off of my resume because during that period in the the 90s when I was doing a lot of those TV movies, it was considered like I might as well have been doing a porn.
Wow.
So, but yeah, that's the way it still is with certain people, and yet what has happened now is they have become lovable characters like Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, Invisible Man, all those universal characters from the 30s. Jason, Freddy, Leatherface, Chucky, all of them have become these sort of endearing characters that little kids, identify with. If I had $1 for every kid that was 6 years old that showed up in a Jason mask and costume, asking for an autograph, I'd be a rich man. It's and I kind of thinking, you're showing your kids this movie, because it still to me was, very unsettling if you're young, but kids just kind of take it in, and it's like it's acceptable. But that's again, it's a new world.
Can you imagine when back in the 30s when Dracula, 30 and 40s, when Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman came out? Full well they were received probably about the same as these slasher films.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely. I want to know, I just started doing the conventions in 2017 when a guest invited me to assist her at one of the horror film conventions, and I was quite honored. First time I was ever on a plane, and but I had a great time at it, but I was wondering, what's the most unique thing you've ever been asked to sign?
A woman's breasts, I guess, comes to mind. And I've just recently I signed some guy's T-shirt. He was like at the cemetery where I have my crypt and things, there's a bunch of people that always come on my birthday, and we'd sort of do what I call a crypt warming to kind of create, positive energy in and around, where I'm going to be for eternity there. And there was a guard there that came up, and I thought he was going to, say something about the large group of people and stuff. But it's like, you did Friday the 13th, Jason Lives? Yeah, will you sign? And he opened up his shirt and then, and had this T-shirt on. And I said, man, if I use this, it's going to go all over your chest. It's going to go right through. I don't care. Just sign it. So, that was probably the most unusual of recent. The one with the girl was quite a few years back. But most of it is pretty much, pictures, albums, the books, all those things. Nothing that's been, I think I had a gum wrapper where somebody says, I can't afford a picture. And, would you sign this? Or a dollar bill. And when that happens, I just take one of the pictures that I have and I go, here, look, I want you to have this. Where normally, you're supposed to, be selling these things and selling the autographs. It's always been difficult for me, to do that. But when everybody else at the convention is charging, you're under this pressure that, you can't be the guy saying, oh, no, you can have it for free, because they're going to go to the next person and go, well, how come you're charging me $20?
It is getting really pricey. Like, somebody had posted on Facebook, I guess, that Arnold Schwarzenegger is supposed to be at one of these conventions, and they say that he's charging $450 an autograph, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, a lot of these kids aren't going to be able to afford that.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of them that are charging a fortune.
And it's like, they really need to come down to reality.
I know.
And I don't get that.
And, if they're getting it, then they'll keep doing it. I mean, that's the thing.
Wow. Yeah. But
well, Greg, we've been going on here for almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
Which is literally 90 minutes more than I normally give, because you're such a terrific person to talk to. But I do have to get back to my writing here.
I just got two people I want to ask you about, if it's okay. One is Tim Madison, and number two, have you ever seen Phoebe Cates after you worked with her?
Well, first question, you mean Tim Matheson?
Tim Matheson, yeah. Yeah.
Matheson. Yeah, Tim and I are still Facebook friends.
Mm-hmm.
After we made that movie, we became very close because our kids were close in age, so we were going to skating rinks together, we were going to movies together and all that. And then he moved up to Santa Barbara, and then it was much harder to see him on a regular basis. But, then he became a director, so then there were lots of times we would connect with one another about, well, how is this person as a crew member? Did you recommend them or not? And he's still one of the nicest guys on the planet, next to Dick Van Dyke.
Okay.
Solid person.
Mm-hmm.
Phoebe, unfortunately, I have not seen at all. She kind of left acting and became, Kevin Kline's wife and raised her kids and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I keep hoping she comes back to the screen at some point, for at least to see her on the screen again, because, I thought she was enormously charismatic and, a lot of fun to be with and around. She's a great actress.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Tom? I hope your film, your Friday the 13th script, gets made. And I really want to see you behind being the director of it, too, because I want to see you bring that energy, that fun, and all those elements that you had in Jason Lives. I'd like to see you bring that, but yet bring something else a little different. And this is why I reached out to you again. It's like I was psyched that that there's a possibility of you getting back behind the camera for the franchise. I think it would be a great idea. I think you're one of the very best, if not the best, director of the franchise.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I'm really anxious to both just start, directing a feature again, because it's, been 8-9 years, I guess, since I was actually, did a film.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was, self-induced, that it's like, no, I've kind of reached a point where I need to go back into life and, going to understand things. Doesn't change the fact I still have a passion for film. And then I've been teaching film at Chapman University, Dodge College in Orange County now for almost 5 years, teaching directing and screenwriting and film production and acting, and to bring all these things to a new generation who have access to the greatest technology ever for making films. It taught me so much, but what it did, of course, was really kick in my passions. I don't want to be talking about this stuff. I don't want to keep talking about things I did 33 years ago. I want to be talking about things that I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And the band has been great in that regard, that I get a chance to get out on stage and act like I did when I was 16 on stage.
Plug Sloth here for a minute. Where can people get your music?
Well, basically all the usual places. iTunes has the Sloth. It's called the Back from the Grave, the
Mm-hmm.
Sloth. And if you go on YouTube, you can see some clips of us from different shows, and we've got 2 music videos that are on there. And then thesloth.org, O-R-G, is like our main page, where you can see where we're going to be playing, and and also pictures and videos and all that as well. So yeah, we are a throwback to those 60s hard rockers who loved the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds and the Animals and stuff, and then kind of processed it through our own sensibilities. And the songs I'm writing are very much like rebellious teenager, because there's a part of me that still remain that kid, that kid that's still saying, you can't tell me to cut my hair. You can't tell me, that I have to go and, go to a war in Vietnam. There's still that tough, rebellious kid from the 60s that's underneath all this.
I love the fact that your hair...
Things have changed.
I love the fact your hair's still long, too.
Yeah. Well, I told somebody yesterday when they asked me, some old guy, that was either my age or maybe just a little bit older, it's like, I wish I had that hair, you keep it all this time in your life. And I go, I fought for it so hard, when I was a teenager, that it's like a badge of courage, a badge of honor now, that to kind of keep it the way I had it then, and I with the band, it's now great, because when people go, "You look like a musician," I go, "Yes, I am," as opposed to, "You're in a band, right?" And I say, "No, I'm a movie director." So, it's like, well, why do you have your hair like that? It's like, 'cause that's who I am.
Was the old guy that said that to you Bob Larkin?
No, but he could have been.
Is he still around, Bob?
Bob, last I heard, he was at the motion picture home out here in Los Angeles, out in the Valley, and I hope he hasn't passed. I didn't hear anything about him leaving and moving on.
Yeah, because I was looking him up.
I'm not sure. I know Ron Palillo we lost.
Yeah.
But everybody else is still out there.
Okay. Well, you know what, Tom? I won't keep you any longer. It's been an honor having you come back on here, and I'm going to try to get other people from the cast on here. But again, I hope you get to make this movie. I seriously hope you get to, and I hope Debbie Sue uses one of your songs there from Sloth and 13 Fanboy. I'm excited to have my name on that as well.
Yeah, and for the fans, check out Vengeance, because as I said, I think it's got every good shot to be really entertaining to you guys, and the fact that they did it for no money in no time, of course, doesn't mean anything to the normal person watching. But for me as a filmmaker, I'm amazed you guys pulled off all this, and with such a tiny budget, and so like 14 days or something, I think, because all they were able to shoot with the budget that they had. So there's a great love for the film, both mine and the franchise in general, and they've come up with some clever things, and you should definitely check it out.
How long is Vengeance? Because I know Never Hike Alone was like 50 minutes or something like that.
Well, this is actually full length. What I consider, and in fact I told these guys this, do not make this long, because you're gonna. It's just these things work best when they're like around 85 to 90 minutes, and I think now it's like maybe 94 or something like that.
Okay.
So it's the right length. It's a length when your system basically says, okay, I need to go to the bathroom now. And how we've pushed movies into 2 hours, 3 hours, it's just crazy to me. As much as I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's like, Quentin, do 2 movies like you did with Kill Bill. Don't make us sit through 3 hours and 20 minutes when it could make and then he still had to cut 40 minutes out just to make it that short. But he loves shooting so much that he just shoots far more than he needs, and that's what they did with Kill Bill. It just say, we'll make 2 movies out of it.
Well, 3 hours of Titanic was too much for me.
Yeah, for most people. I mean, my mother sat through it when I took her to see it, and my 6-year-old sat through it, which I thought, well, they were engaged, but to me, it's just way longer than what I think a story, should be.
Well, I remember I saw that as a double billing with Tomorrow Never Dies, and I like Tomorrow Never Dies a lot more than Titanic.
That's interesting.
Before I let you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Horror fans, you are listening to me, Tom McLoughlin, writer-director of Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6. And I want to tell you, keep listening, because you're going to hear things that will haunt you into your dreams. And you're also listening to Greg Gilbert's Python Paradise, New Brunswick, Canada.
We got to get you to New Brunswick, man. I know you've been to Halifax. You got to come to New Brunswick now and get the Trailer Park Boys in your movie.
Yeah, I got to meet those guys when I was shooting up there in Halifax. They all came down to the set, because I the sound guy was, who was the stoner on the show? Not the 3 guy, one of the... Trevor? Trevor? Was that the character?
I don't know. I
anyway,
don't know.
He, when I recognized him, and I said, I am a huge fan. Like, I just binge watched instead of sleeping the other night every Trailer Park Boys show. So then he had all the boys come out, to the set. I was just so, honored. And this is like, I think, the first season. So, and the fact that they've done so well for so many years is great.
Yeah, I love them too. We're quite proud of them here. Well, anyway, Tom, thank you so much for coming back on here, and you know what? The 35th anniversary of Jason Lives is coming up. Maybe we'll do another revisit.
Okay, yeah, 2 more years. All right. Thank you for the correction on my year. I don't know how I ended up doing the math incorrectly there, but I certainly did.
Well, you know what? It's just a simple, honest mistake. No big deal. I think you just counted 86 as 1. I think that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. No big deal.
Certainly. No, but it would have been.
Well.
All right. Thanks so much, Greg.
God bless you, and thank you so much, Tom.
God bless you, too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.